Low mood in kids and teens, what helps and what doesn't. Hello and welcome back to the Resilient Kid podcast with me, Ashley Costello. This week is often referred to as Blue Monday. The idea that January brings lower mood, less motivation, and a general sense of heaviness. I think a lot of us set off, don't we, with, New Year's Eve resolutions. This is what we're going to do. New year, new me, new goals, all that malarkey. And actually, Blue Monday is that time that we just hit. The third week of Jan. And whether or not we believe in Blue Monday in a single day, what is very real is this. January is a time when many kids feel flatter, quieter, more irritable and more withdrawn. Now, go back to episode 1 of this year and listen to why January particular is hard for all of us as parents, as carers, as kids and teens. But notice, as parents and carers, we start to notice it at home. Teachers notice it in the classroom. And often the worry sounds like they're just not themselves, or they seem low, but I don't know why. Is this something I should be concerned about? We get a real rise in referrals and people, parents and teachers reaching out. So today's episode is especially helpful in understanding that low mood, what's happening in the brain, what helps, what doesn't, and also how, as adults who care about them, can respond in ways that support rather than add pressure. So let's get into it. Low mood is not the same as laziness or bad attitude, because sometimes we get that, they've just got a bad attitude. Actually, it's not about that. So let's start by being really clear about something. Low mood in children does not usually look like lying on the sofa saying, I feel sad, right? If that was the case, it would be easier. All right. It often looks like kids being irritable, withdrawn, tired, lack of motivation to do homework or anything else, tearfulness over small things or what appears to be small things to us, less tolerance to challenge, especially if they've got siblings. In school, for the educators listening, might be reduced engagement, slower work, zoning out when they're supposed to be listening, more conflict in the playground. Have you noticed that after lunch or after break, that zone around your desk, that little queue is getting bigger and bigger, and that time after lunch is just getting longer in trying to sort out all the misunderstandings that have happened, and then maybe shut down as well. So from a brain perspective, this makes sense. And I want to just say this kind of before we really get into it, is if your child or teen is struggling with a really, really low mood for more than 2 to 3 weeks, go to the doctors. Go to the doctors, because that is different. Depression is very different than low mood. And what I will say to you though is, with teens, but we still need to get it checked out. If I was to list all the teens' behaviour, what they're going through, all that, and look at the DSM register, which is the diagnostic manual that we look at for mental health, and look at the symptoms of depression, there'd be a massive overlap. That does not mean to say that we don't take it serious though. So please, seek help if there is no periods of them being excitable or enjoying anything, if this very low mood, and I mean very low mood, is lasting more than 2 to 3 weeks. So why is it that from a brain perspective, all this irritability and, lack of motivation and stuff, why does it make sense? Well, when the mood is low, the brain's reward and motivation systems are quieter. They kind of don't shut down, but they just turn down. So while the stress response system is actually more active, what we notice is reward and motivation is lower. They don't usually, you have a higher version of one, lower of the other, a little bit like a weighing scale. So children aren't choosing not to try, their brains are working with less emotional energy. So what's happening in the brain? Well, low mood is closely linked to how the brain processes stress, safety, reward, and connection. Now, few key things to understand. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that's responsible for focus, emotional regulation, and problem solving. And when our mood is low, and this goes for us as adults as well, or stress is high, the part of the brain works less efficiently. That's why you might see kids and teens give up quickly, struggle to concentrate, and just overall seem less resilient. So the amygdala, which is part of our limbic brain system, is our like a little alarm. So in January, because we're tired, we've got disrupted sleep, we're trying to catch up after Christmas, there's sometimes academic pressure thrown into the mix and darker mornings, then the alarm system can become more sensitive. And even when there's nothing obvious wrong, it can lead to like an emotional flatness, or we often get teens reporting, I feel numb, I don't feel anything. You see them being more irritable with each other, and sometimes they start to withdraw. And it's not about, I think sometimes we see this as, it's just drama. It's more drama. But actually, from a brain perspective, it's self-protection. So why does January make low mood more likely? Well, for both parents and teachers, it helps to see January as a context, not a cause. So because January is reduced daylight, which affects our serotonin and melatonin, disrupts sleep, we often have academic pressures because even primary kids, if you've got a year sixer, teachers are starting to talk about SATs as they get back to school in January, or you've got mocks, or you've got GCSEs or assessments, the whole works. Fewer breaks to look forward to. So we've got half term, but it feels like a long way off. And then there's an emotional roller coaster that is Christmas, and there's always a bit of a come down after that, isn't there? So, they don't have the language, and I think I said this kind of in the first podcast, that often unless your kid has been in, say, a program like ours, like Resilient Kid Program, or they've had therapy with us or others, then they haven't got the language to say, I feel flat and overwhelmed. They haven't got the emotional awareness to be able to recognize it, let alone speak it out loud. So what they'll do is show it. And that's why it's often common to we see more referrals in school, we see more behavioural concerns, and that obviously as parents leads to us being more anxious about what's happening, So what we do know is the systems themselves are already under strain. So what helps? Let's get on to what actually helps us. For parents and educators, let's talk about what genuinely supports children experiencing low mood. Well, again, predictability and safety. Low mood improves when the brain feels less uncertain. So for parents and carers, keep routines simple and steady. Reduce any unnecessary demands, reduce choice, and try and be emotionally predictable. Now that's hard for us, and I say this as any adult who have kids, teens, whether you're an educator, whether you're a carer, whether you're a parent, the more predictable we are, the better for them, the easier it is for them. Okay? For teachers and educators, clear expectations, set them out, this is what we're going to do. Make the routine of the day predictable. This is in the morning. This is what we're going to do today. Sometimes using visual times tables as well helps. calm, consistent responses. And that doesn't matter if you are a primary educator and you've got the same set of kids all day, or whether you have got students in and out of your classes. Make your lessons predictable. This is what we do to start, this is what we do to end. Calm, consistent responses. And, the reason why I'm banging on so much about predictability is it reduces that cognitive load and helps the brain feel safe. All right. Another thing you can do is connection before you challenge. So children with low mood need that connection before there's motivation. Connection comes first, motivation will come second. So things like, I've noticed you seem a bit quieter lately. Is everything okay? I'm here if you're getting overwhelmed. You don't have to push through. Come and speak to me. Let's have a chat. And this is easier, isn't it, as a parent or a carer where we've got more one-on-one time. But, just stopping at the end of the lesson, holding somebody back, or, just catching them in, are you okay? Just checking in, or getting the form tutor to check in with them. A quick check-in can be more powerful than encouragement to try harder. And it's really funny because I've had a few conversations before Christmas with teachers. In high school, we don't get the opportunity to connect in with kids like we do. In primary, we know the kids, we know their siblings, we know their mum and dad usually, we know, who picks them up, whether it's Nana picks them up on a Thursday, things like that. We know what kind of things they're into. And actually, I've had a very frank conversation with some teachers, particularly form teachers, and said, do you know any hobbies that your kids in your class? Now, I know you only see them 15 minutes a day, but we've got one student particularly that is really struggling. Have you asked them what they did over Christmas? Have you asked them what hobbies they do? Tell me one thing you're really proud of. And connect in and remember that, and then ask them about it again, because that means a huge amount to kids. We think they don't care, but actually taking an interest really works. Another thing, adjust demand. Now, this is only a temporary measure, but we're not on about lowering standards forever. But notice that capacity, just as us as adults don't have the capacity all the time, neither do kids. So, for example, chunk down the work, offer movement breaks, allow some thinking time, right? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to just think about that before we set off on it. And also, as a that's really helpful in the classroom, but actually at home, reduce the after school overload. So don't have them out every night doing something. It's different when it's summer, but at nights they need to be home. They need, don't do 2 or 3 activities. If your kid wants to sign up for something and maybe they also need a tutor, right? Say they've got swimming lessons and they need a tutor. And they've also, they're really, really talented at football or netball or rugby, anything like that, right? Or they want to sign up for guitar lessons. Don't have 2 on the same night. It's too much. The demand on their cognition is way too much. So if it is you've been waiting all year to do swim lessons, then you need to move the tutor. You need to move the other things. If rugby is on a Wednesday night, then do not take anything else. And even if the kid's going, but I really want to do guitar, well, maybe that's something that we do in the half term. Maybe that's something that we do in the summer holidays. Be very aware of overloading them, and there is nothing wrong with going, let's give this a go for 12 weeks, see how you go. If you want to carry on, great. If you don't, let's have a look at something else. But we don't have to do everything all at once. And I guess what I would say here is the 4th point I'd like to make, I suppose, really, that will help is regulation before reasoning. So support the body first. Trying to get them into that regulated, lift the mood, right? Things like movement, things like getting them outside, getting fresh air, whether it's walk around the block with a dog, borrow a neighbour's dog, whether it's let's walk to the shop, things like that. Getting them to move helps the nervous system, keeping them warm, because what we know is if they get cold, then the nervous system will spike. And I say this to teachers a lot. If they've been out playing football, they've took the jumpers off or the coats off, used as goalposts, whatever, they've been running around, then they come in, they've not put the jumper back on because they're boiling. Within 15 minutes, their body cannot regulate their temperature. They will need you to point out that they've now suddenly got cold. That sounds really bizarre, doesn't it, as adults? Because the minute that we're cold, our brain kicks in and we think, oh, I need a jumper. That doesn't happen the same with kids. We need to be spotting the signs because they will not learn, they will not be able to concentrate, and they are more likely to go into fight and flight if they are not warm. So if their mood is low, they need to keep warm more so. Anything that's going to be grounding, anything that's going to help them breathe regularly. If you've got a low mood, getting oxygen into the body and, start in a class, start in bedtime or in the bath, just having that extra, few breaths where it's concentrated, or just taking a slow minute. So for instance, if your kids are low, why not kind of make a hot chocolate, sit, and before they drink it, get them to just breathe it in. 3, 4, 5 big deep breaths, smell it first. The anticipation of that hot chocolate will just be amazing. But what you're doing is getting more oxygen into the brain. You're really going to boost their mood. All right. I kind of want to move on as well to what doesn't help, even though, it's well intended. Okay, this part for me is really important. And I think it's probably, if you're of a certain generation like me, you were brought up with these kind of sayings. And I think when we're stressed, we often go to the default setting of what our parents said to us or our grandparents said to us. So what I would say to you is things not to say. You've got nothing to be sad about. Now, most of our kids and most of, the parents and carers, I hope most of us are lucky enough to be in a position to have shelter, to have food, to have warmth, So yes, in comparison to people who are homeless or who are hungry, have they got anything to be sad about? Generally, no. However, what we don't want to do is invalidate their internal experience, what they're feeling right now. Okay. Along the lines as well, we get, and don't say this, try harder, be grateful, others have it worse. All right. Because this adds shame. It adds pressure. They feel like they should be grateful. And actually, they're just going through a feeling right now. Okay. Another thing not to do, don't over reassure. Don't try and fix it. Jumping in to solve it can unintentionally communicate to them, you're not allowed to have these feelings. Your feelings are too much. You're too much. Okay. Don't give a punishment for that low energy behavior. So behavior driven by low mood needs support, not sanctions. So if they've not done something, if they can't be bothered, let's find out why, rather than why they're in this low mood, not why haven't you done that. Okay. So what I would say to you is, there are certain times that we need to keep an eye on things. Low mood is often just temporary. It's just situational. It will move. It will pass. Okay, but I want you to look out for these things. Low mood if it persists for weeks, if there is significant withdrawal, particularly tween teens, check, and this is very hard, I think, in the dark, in the cold, but make sure that they are not self-harming, and we'll do an episode later in the year on self-harming. But if you are worried, reach out to us. Sleep and appetite changes, if it's noticeably changed. If there is a loss of interest in things that they used to enjoy, like stuff they used to really like and then suddenly they've stopped enjoying it. Early support can really, really help, right? It's not overreacting. Reach out if you've got any concerns, any worries around this. Either check the socials and DM us, or message me. You can message me personally, Ashley at theresilientkid.co.uk. We'll always, either me or one of the coaches will always have a chat with you. So, to finish, low mood in children isn't a parenting failure. I often, when I have parenting calls, and the way that we work is, we work one-on-one with kids or we do family sessions, but we always have parent check-ins. And one of the big things I say is, do you want them happy or do you want them safe? And they go, can we not do both? And I'll go, it's not our job to keep our kids happy. It's our job to keep our kids safe. So we're not failing if they've got a low mood. Okay? It is purely a signal, right? And as parents and carers, we need to be responding with that understanding, that predictability, that steadiness, reduce the pressure a little bit. Our job is to keep them emotionally and psychologically safe, and we can do that with predictability and with routine. Just while they're recovering, especially in January. This is Blue Monday week. It's the most powerful thing we can offer kids isn't positivity, it's permission. Permission to feel supported while things are heavy, while they feel low. So that's it from me. Thank you for listening to the Resilient Kid podcast today. If this episode resonated, please share it with a parent, carer, teacher, educator, because supporting, our kids, no matter their age, is always a team effort. And remember, behaviour is communication, mood is information, and connection changes everything. Next week, we're going to do a round table around behaviour is communication, and we'll have guests on that. So take care. Lots of love from us to you here at The Resilient Kid. Bye for now.